So this is nothing more than just taking the old bolts. This is the main bolt, and just cut a relief. Cut 3 of them. One more thing to note is it says here cast or forge hyper eutectic, whatever that is. And then the second ring. So you have your first ring and your second ring. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thank you for joining. Hopefully you're enjoying the day. Today I am going to show you guys how to gap piston rings. Ran into a small little issue I want to share with you guys. So as I'm setting up the table here to start to explain how to figure out the piston ring gap, follow this chart here. I went ahead and did the math, threw a piston ring in just to see where these piston rings are as far as gap goes coming from Summit. So here's what I got. Put a piston ring in and look at that gap. So of course, naturally what I did was grabbed my 28 thousandths. Just to explain to you guys, the math is 28 thousandths based on the boost, based on this being the top ring, and doing bore times 0.007 comes out to 0.028. All right, so you get that number. I'll walk you guys through that. But anyway, check this. I was like, boy, that's one hell of a gap. So I went ahead and checked it. You guys can see that. And there is, I don't know if you guys can see that on video or not, but there is a lot of play there. So naturally, the first thing I thought was I ordered the wrong pistons and rings. So I checked the order again, verified. It's for a 6-liter 4-inch bore, LQ4, LQ9, LS2, those kinds of deals. So then it dawned on me that maybe I should check the bore size. So when I come over here and I check the bore size, well, before I do that, let me show you guys what I did. Sorry, the garage is kind of messy, but what I did was I went over here to my spare block and threw a piston ring in, and I don't know if you guys can see it on video, but that's the gap right there. So you can't slide anything in there. There is no gap there. Well, maybe there's, I don't know, 15 thousandths, if that, 10 thousandths. So I thought that was awfully weird. So I went ahead and wanted to measure the bore. Before that, I checked, verified, it's a 6-liter. Came over here, of course the tag, so this is true, it was made in 2012, this motor. This is right around the time the guy told me that the motor was replaced under warranty or something like that. Said let me check the bore diameter. Now keep in mind, this is one of those cheap calipers, so it's got a little bit of wiggle room in it, but when you find, give me a second here, trying to do this with one hand. When you find the right spot, all right, so went ahead over here, checked again. Again, you got to play with it a little bit, but it roughly comes out to 20 thousandths over. So then, well, my question was, well, if these pistons are made for 4-inch bore and they are super loose in here, what was the diameter of the pistons that came in the in the block when I tore it down. So when you check this out, take a look here. So the diameter, this is extremely difficult to do with one hand, but essentially the diameter here, comes out to about 4.95 almost. Alright, but then if you take a look at the stock one that came with the car, it's not clearing it. So open it up just a tiny bit, and here we have 4.99. So it looks like this block here is bored 20 over, or was bored 20 over at one point in time. I also checked the cylinder wall thickness between this and the iron block, and this is definitely thinner than the other one. So for sure this engine was at one point in time bored over. These are not, I don't know what pistons these are, I haven't looked up these numbers, but they're certainly not 6-liter pistons, unless I'm missing something here. But ultimately what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and pull this block off the stand, and we are going to grab the iron block and we're going to use that instead for the build. This is actually pretty good because this is an aluminum block, and one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to have, whenever you're running boost, you want to have that wall thickness, obviously, because you're going to be throwing extra pressure into the chamber. So good thing that I found out. I mean, I don't know how I would have missed it, but good thing I found out now. I'm going to go ahead, swap this out for the iron block, and start gapping the piston rings here. Alright, so finally got the iron block onto the engine stand. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what we got going on here. So I placed one of the rings in, back on track, have a slight gap there. I'm going to go ahead and start gapping the rings. I mentioned before on how to do this. So when you buy your piston rings, depending on where you get them from, you are going to have hopefully a printout. So I got mine from Summit Racing. This is their Summit Pro LS series, and basically this is what it looks like. You get this chart, and when you gap your rings, you gap them to what you think you're going to be doing. So I know mine's going to be forced induction. I know I'm going to be running over 15 pounds. So basically you do bore times 0.007 and you come up with a number. So if you do 4-inch bore times 0.007, you come up with 0.028 for a gap. That's for the top rings. For the bottom rings, so you have one more thing to note is it says here cast or forge hyper eutectic, whatever that is, and then the second ring. So you have your first ring and your second ring, top, second ring. When you come over here, follow it across, 0.0075 comes out to 0.030, and then your oil rail, all pistons, minimum of 0.015, so equal to or greater than 0.015, so I'll just verify those. here we are again, working on the LS block. What I'm doing today is I'm going to chase some threads. So before you assemble your LS block, you want to make sure that you get all this crust and whatnot out of these threads. Can't really see inside of there. These are where your head bolts go. So what I went ahead and did, I took some penetrating fluid and I doused all of these holes. And then I went ahead and made some thread chasers. So this is nothing more than just taking the old bolts. This is the main bolt, and just cut a relief. Cut 3 of them. One here, one there, one there. Then it's this bolt, which the small head bolt actually works on several different threads. It basically takes care of the front cover, the cam plates, basically all these holes here, as well as these up here, and then these back here as well. So you don't really need that many. When I took one of the head bolts, put them in here, I got a cup of gasoline here, and all I'm doing is when I run this into the threads, bring it back out, just rinse it off in gasoline. If you didn't know, gasoline is an awesome cleaner. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Figured I'll take care of that. I do have the tool for knocking out the cam bearings. Unfortunately, I don't have the cam bearings till tomorrow, so I don't know if we're gonna do that today or not. But just gonna go ahead and work on trying to clean up the block as much as possible right before we assemble it. So go ahead and put you guys on a time lapse here. So here's the finished product. As you can see, threads are nice and clean. Should not have any issues with bolting stuff in. One thing I forgot to mention to you guys is if you are going to be doing this, on the video you saw me using a power tool, when you go to start the thread, when you go to start the thread, and you're using a tool, make sure you don't basically come there and just start ratcheting on it. Basically what I do is I get the bolt onto the hole, and I very, very, very gently start spinning it, and you'll feel it catch. If at any given time it just stops, back off immediately. Check the threads, make sure that you didn't start cross-threading. Alternatively, you can do this with a ratchet. Takes a little bit longer. I feel pretty confident, using the power tool to do this rather than the ratchet, simply because you can just slowly squeeze the trigger and it'll stop if it comes in any binds. It will bind as you go in, because the threads, depending on where your block has been, they might be dirty. So go in and out a few times. What you might notice is as you're dipping, depending on how you do this, I was dipping mine in the gasoline and swirling around. I looked every once in a while, and majority of the time it was clean, but sometimes you'll have like little debris stuck in there that won't come off. So I just took a brush and brushed off the threads. So here's the finished product. I'll do the rear cover holes as well. I found the holes that are kind of internal to the engine aren't as bad as the ones that are somewhat external to the engine, but then again, this block has been sitting out, although bagged, has been sitting out. So go ahead and finish this up, and I'll probably start maybe cleaning up the block a little bit, using a razor blade, checking straightness really quick, and then go from there.